Friday of the 10th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the second letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, we hold this treasure in earthen vessels, that the surpassing power may be of God and not from us. We are afflicted in every way but not constrained, perplexed but not driven to despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed, always carrying about in the body the dying of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our body. For we who live are constantly being given up to death for the sake of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may be manifested in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life in you. Since then we have the same spirit of faith, according to what is written, I believed, therefore I spoke. We too believe and therefore speak, knowing that the one who raised the Lord Jesus will raise us also with Jesus, and place us with you in his presence. Everything indeed is for you, so that the grace bestowed in abundance on more and more people may cause the thanksgiving to overflow for the glory of God. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, To you, Lord, I will offer a sacrifice of praise. I believed, even when I said, I am greatly afflicted. I said in my alarm, no man is dependable. To you, Lord, I will offer a sacrifice of praise. Precious in the eyes of the Lord is the death of his faithful ones. O Lord, I am your servant. I am your servant, the son of your handmaid. You have loosed my bonds. To you, Lord, I will offer a sacrifice of praise. To you will I offer sacrifice of thanksgiving, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. My vows to the Lord I will pay in the presence of all his people. To you, Lord, I will offer a sacrifice of praise.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, You have heard that it was said, You shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than to have your whole body thrown into Gehenna. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than to have your whole body go into Gehenna. It was also said, Whoever divorces his wife must give her a bill of divorce. But I say to you, whoever divorces his wife, unless the marriage is unlawful, causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. The Gospel of the Lord.
June 16th, Friday of the 10th week in Ordinary Time. The first reading comes from 2 Corinthians 4, 7-15. Paul speaks about the treasure which is held in earthen vessels. The earthen vessels are the bodies of the apostles, and the treasure is the gospel message. They are fragile, they're fallible, they make mistakes, and furthermore, they suffer. They're killed, they're martyred. Yet the treasure is not lost, because the treasure is passed on to these people. In passing on the treasure, the apostles are suffering death, diminishment, because they're dying to themselves. But that death to themselves is bringing life to the Corinthians, so it's all worthwhile. That in our ministry, whatever that ministry might be, we shouldn't look at it in terms of what we'll get out of it, but rather what we can give. And when we're called to give more than we think is possible, we should rejoice, because that's a sign that God is entrusting the mission to us, the very mission of being sacraments of the Passion of Christ. Because that's what Paul is talking about, visible signs of the invisible grace, visible signs of dying on the cross, so that these people might share in life. The Gospel is from Matthew 5, 27 to 32. Jesus continues to build a fence around the law by talking about adultery. If you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery. Now, the question is, what happens if we just have a dirty thought that comes into our mind? If it's a sexual temptation, a temptation is not a sin. We have to act on it. We have to keep going over it in our mind. We have to treat a person in a sexualized manner for it to be truly adultery. If the thought just pops into our mind, we didn't intend to have it there, then it's a temptation. The rabbis have a saying, sexual temptation can get you into trouble, but without it you're dead. It's part of life. And so we should recognize it as such, part of our humanity, and not be bummed out by it, but rather not let it control us either. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Now, unfortunately, the father of the church, Origen, took this rather literally. He had sexual temptations, so he literally cut it off. That's not what Jesus intends. This is, again, a very Jewish way of teaching, an exaggeration. What it means is that we should keep our priorities straight and we should hold on to them. And if there are things in our life that we have to get rid of in order to serve God, then maybe we should get rid of them. And then there's a condemnation of divorce. Now we see this condemnation twice in the Gospel of Matthew, once in Mark, once in Luke, and once in 1 Corinthians. It's clear that Jesus did not permit divorce. Why? Because marriage is a covenant, and covenants are intended to be eternal. Our covenant with God shouldn't be something that we just are faithful to when it's convenient. It's an eternal covenant. Likewise, our covenant with another person. That doesn't answer the question, though, of what we do with those who are already divorced. Is there some way that we can heal some of the hurt that they've caused themselves? Even if the divorce was sinful, and there's always some sin involved in divorce, maybe not in both parties, but at least someone. Can we find a way of healing that hurt? Can we find a way of welcoming divorced, remarried people back into the fold? And Pope Francis has begun a dialogue in the church about this. It's not an easy dialogue because we've had rather clear rules for centuries, and now Pope Francis is challenging that a bit and saying, can we look at it again in the Spirit and find some way that we can show the love of God to these people? And may God bless us.